I found the group text 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I never made it to dessert. My fingers had been searching for my grocery list when I picked up the wrong phone from the kitchen counter. David's iPhone, identical to mine except for the small crack on his screen protector. The notification banner caught my eye before I could set it down. Mom. Everything set for the 28th? Amanda confirmed? My stomach tightened. The 28th was Thanksgiving. Who was Amanda? I should have put it down. Should have respected his privacy. But something in my gut, that instinct you develop after 15 years of marriage, told me to look. I swiped open the message thread. The conversation stretched back 3 months. My mother-in-law, David, and someone named Amanda coordinating what they called the Thanksgiving intervention. David. She's been freeloading for 5 years now. It's embarrassing when my colleagues ask what she does. Mom. You've been too patient. A woman her age should contribute financially. Amanda. Once you're single, we won't have to hide anymore. I'm tired of being the secret. My hands went numb. I stood in our kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made breakfast for our kids that morning, and read through months of messages planning my humiliation. They were going to ambush me at Thanksgiving dinner in front of the entire family, pressure me to get a real job, make me feel worthless enough that when David asked for a divorce, I'd accept it quietly. The cruelest part? They thought they were being clever. Strategic. Amanda sent laughing emojis after suggesting they time it for maximum impact, when I'd be too shocked to fight back effectively. I heard the garage door opening. David coming home from the office. I placed his phone back exactly where I'd found it, my heart hammering against my ribs. When he walked into the kitchen, I greeted him with the same smile I'd worn for 15 years. Hey honey, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. How was work? Exhausting, he replied, loosening his tie. He didn't meet my eyes. Big case wrapping up before the holiday. I nodded, watching him grab a beer from the refrigerator. The man I'd met in college, who'd promised to build a life with me, who'd held my hand through 2 difficult pregnancies, was now planning my systematic destruction. With his mother, and his paralegal. The kids at practice? He asked. Picking them up in 20 minutes, I answered. Emma's soccer. Jake's piano. Our normal Wednesday routine. Except nothing was normal anymore. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I lay beside David in our bed, staring at the ceiling. He scrolled through his phone, probably texting Amanda. I wondered how long it had been going on. How many late nights at the office had been spent with her. How many times he'd come home and kissed me with lies still on his lips. You okay? He asked, not looking up. You're quiet. Just tired, I replied. Thinking about Thanksgiving prep. Don't stress too much about it, he said, finally setting his phone down. Mom's bringing the turkey this year, remember? Oh, I remembered. The turkey and the ambush. I waited until his breathing deepened into sleep, then slipped out of bed. In my home office, the small room where I'd been freelancing as a graphic designer for the past 5 years while raising our children, I opened my laptop. First, I checked our bank accounts. The joint checking where his lawyer's salary got deposited, the savings account we'd built together, and the small account I'd maintained from my design work. I'd been transferring my freelance income there for tax purposes. $15,432. Money I'd earned designing logos, wedding invitations, and small business websites while managing school pickups and soccer practices and doctor appointments. My mother had passed away a year ago from cancer. In my grief, I'd never gotten around to closing her bank account. It sat dormant with $17 in it. Tomorrow, I would add my name to it officially. No, not tomorrow. Today. It was already past midnight. I opened a private browser and began researching. Oregon abandonment laws. Divorce procedures. Custody arrangements. Every search felt like pulling a thread that would unravel my entire life. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. The next morning, I dropped the kids at school and drove to my mother's bank. The manager, who remembered me from helping Mom with her accounts during her illness, was sympathetic when I explained I needed to complete the paperwork. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said, processing the documents. Your mother was a lovely woman. She was, I agreed, signing where indicated. She taught me to always have my own resources. That afternoon, while David was at work, I transferred my entire freelance account into Mom's old account. Then I went to the safe deposit box we kept at a different bank and removed my important documents: birth certificate, social security card, passport, the kids' birth certificates. I left David's documents untouched. I couldn't take the children. Not yet. The thought of leaving them, even temporarily, made me physically ill. But I'd learned from my research that disappearing with minors could destroy my custody case. I needed to do this legally, carefully. That evening, I made David's favorite dinner. Pot roast with roasted vegetables, the meal his mother had taught me to make when we got engaged. He ate without really tasting it, checking his phone between bites. "Mom's excited about Thanksgiving," he mentioned casually. "The whole family coming together." I replied, cutting my meat into tiny pieces I could barely swallow. "Should be memorable." Over the next 2 weeks, I moved like a ghost through my own life. I contacted 3 of my best design clients and lined up enough work to sustain me for at least 3 months. I found a short-term rental in Vancouver, a small studio apartment I could afford for 6 months if I was careful. I researched women's support groups in Seattle. I made copies of every financial document I could find. And I played my role perfectly. The dutiful wife, the attentive mother, the woman they all thought was too soft to fight back. The night before Thanksgiving, I packed a suitcase. Not obvious things, but items I couldn't replace. The photo album from my childhood. My grandmother's necklace. The journal I'd kept since college. I told David I was taking donations to Goodwill before the holiday rush. "That's nice of you," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "Very charitable." I loaded the suitcase into my car alongside bags of old clothes that actually were going to Goodwill. One truth hiding another. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear. I woke up at 5 to start cooking. Not because they deserved it, but because I needed everyone to remember this meal. The perfect pies, the homemade cranberry sauce, the side dishes made from scratch. I wanted them to know, later, exactly what they'd lost. David's family arrived at 2. His mother swept in with the catered turkey she'd ordered, kissing me on the cheek while probably calculating how soon she could begin the intervention. David's father, his brother and sister-in-law, his grandmother. Amanda wasn't there. Too obvious, I supposed. She'd join the victory celebration later. The kids were excited, running around with their cousins. I watched Emma, 12 and beautiful, so confident in her soccer cleats and ponytail. Jake, 9, already showing David's sharp mind but with my gentle heart. How would I explain this to them? Dinner started at 4. 23 people crowded around our dining room table and the extended folding tables David had set up in the living room. I'd cooked for an army, and everyone praised the food. At 5:30, as I started clearing dessert plates, David's mother tapped her wine glass. "Before we all slip into our traditional food comas," she announced, smiling at the scattered laughter, "I'd like to address something important." My heart rate spiked, but I kept clearing plates, playing oblivious. "Sarah," she continued, her voice taking on that concerned tone that made my skin crawl. "Sweetheart, could you sit down for a moment?" I set down the plates slowly and took my seat. David sat beside me, not meeting my eyes. His father looked uncomfortable. Everyone else looked confused. "We've all been worried about you," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. 15 years is a long time to be out of the workforce. "I've been working," I said quietly. "Freelance design." "Well, yes, your little hobby," she waved dismissively. "But David tells us it barely covers groceries. At your age, with your education, don't you think it's time for something more substantial?" The table had gone quiet. Even the kids had stopped playing in the other room. "I've been raising our children," I said, looking at David. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. "And you've done wonderfully," his mother continued in that patronizing tone. "But Emma's 12 now. Jake's 9. They're in school all day. What do you do with your time?" I could feel it building, the pressure to defend myself, to list everything I did. Instead, I excused myself. "I'm sorry, I need to check on the kids," I said, standing up. "Sarah." "We're not finished," she started. "Give me a moment," I said, walking toward the hallway. I didn't go to the kids. I stood just around the corner, out of sight, and listened. "Well, that was dramatic," David's mother said. "See what I mean? So sensitive." "Mom, maybe we should have done this privately," David's brother said. "No, she needs to hear this from all of us," she insisted. David's been supporting her for 5 years while she plays on her computer. It's not fair to him. I've been patient, David said, and I heard the relief in his voice at finally saying it aloud. But it's embarrassing when my partners ask what she does and I have to make excuses. You've been more than patient, his mother agreed. You deserve a partner who contributes, not dead weight. Dead weight. The same words from the text messages. I walked calmly to the coat closet, pulled on my jacket, grabbed my purse with my wallet and documents, and went out the side door to my car. My suitcase was still in the trunk from yesterday's Goodwill excuse. I sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking, and started the engine. Through the window, I could see the warm glow of my dining room, my family and his family still seated at the table I'd set. They probably thought I was upstairs crying. I put the car in reverse. My phone buzzed almost immediately. David. Then again. And again. I turned it off and placed it in the cup holder. Tomorrow I'd mail it back with the SIM card removed. The drive to Vancouver took 6 hours. I stopped once for gas and coffee, paid cash for both. The border crossing was simple with my passport. The Canadian agent barely glanced at me before waving me through. The studio apartment I'd rented sight unseen was in an older building on Commercial Drive, above a Vietnamese restaurant. The smell of pho and garlic filled the hallway. The apartment itself was barely 400 square feet. A Murphy bed that folded into the wall, a kitchenette with 2 burners, a bathroom the size of a closet. I locked the door behind me, set my suitcase down, and finally let myself cry. Not for David. Not for the marriage that had been dying slowly for years. I cried for my children waking up tomorrow morning to find me gone. For the Thanksgiving dinner I'd left on the table. For the life I'd built, however imperfect, that had just imploded. But I didn't cry for long. I'd learned from my mother, in those last months before cancer took her, that tears were fine, but action was better. At midnight, I opened my laptop and wrote 2 emails. One to Emma and Jake, age-appropriate explanations that Mom loved them. Mom needed time to be strong for them. Mom would always be their mom. I saved it as a draft. I'd send it when I was ready. The other email went to David's personal address, not the family email we shared. Subject. Don't look for me. David. I heard everything at Thanksgiving. Your mother's speech was just confirmation of what you'd already planned with her and Amanda for months. Yes, I know about Amanda. I've known for 2 weeks. By the time you read this, I'll be somewhere you can't find me. Don't insult me by pretending you care. You wanted me gone. Congratulations. I've left you a note on the kitchen counter with my lawyer's information. In Oregon, 2 years of separation is grounds for abandonment divorce. I'll file when the time is appropriate. Until then, enjoy your freedom. Give the children my love. Tell them I'll be in contact soon through proper channels. Sarah. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I curled up on the Murphy bed in my tiny apartment in a foreign country and tried to remember how to breathe. The first month in Vancouver was survival mode. I worked 16-hour days on design projects, hunched over my laptop at the small folding table that served as my desk. The Vietnamese restaurant downstairs became my primary food source. $5 bowls of pho stretched across 2 meals. I'd bought a Canadian phone with a prepaid SIM card. No one had the number except my 3 main design clients. Every morning I checked my old email address from a virtual private network to see what chaos I'd left behind. David had filed a missing person report. The police had questions. His lawyer had sent 3 letters to our home address demanding contact. His mother had posted on Facebook asking if anyone had seen me, playing the concerned mother-in-law to perfection. But I'd committed no crime. I was an adult who'd left a bad situation. After 2 weeks, the missing person case was closed. I was free. What haunted me were the emails from Emma's school account. My daughter had somehow figured out my personal email address. Mom. Where are you? Dad says you needed space but won't say more. Jake keeps crying. Please come home. I promise I'll be better. Love, Emma. I read it 17 times before I could bring myself to respond. My dearest Emma. You are perfect. You could not be better. None of this is about you or Jake. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people we love, even when we're trying to protect them. I needed to leave for my own health and heart. But I will always be your mother. I'll be in contact through official channels soon. Tell Jake I love him to the moon and back. I love you to the stars and beyond. Mom. The second month, I ran out of project work. My savings were dwindling faster than I'd calculated. Vancouver was more expensive than Portland, and I'd underestimated how much I'd been relying on David's income for the basics. I applied to every design position I could find, but my resume had a 5-year gap that made employers hesitant. What were you doing during this time? They'd ask in interviews. Raising my children, I'd answer. The conversation would shift awkwardly, and I'd never hear back. One night, I ran my bank balance and realized I had 8 weeks left. Maybe 10 if I ate nothing but rice and eggs. I'd spent the past month being strong, being decisive, being the woman who'd walked away from humiliation with her head high. That night, alone in my studio with my phone in my hand, I almost called David. Almost asked if I could come back. Almost agreed that maybe I had been dead weight, maybe I should have tried harder, maybe I deserved what happened. My finger hovered over his number for a full minute. Then, I thought about his mother's voice. Dead weight. I thought about Amanda's laughing emojis. I thought about my daughter asking what she could do better, as if any of this was her fault. I put the phone down and opened my portfolio website instead. The design was 3 years old, outdated and uninspiring. I spent the next 12 hours rebuilding it from scratch, showcasing not just my work but my process, my philosophy, my journey from corporate designer to mother, to freelancer, to survivor. I launched it at 4 a.m., crawled into bed, and slept for 3 hours before my alarm went off. The email came 2 days later. Subject line, Portfolio Review, Seattle Design Collective. They'd found my website somehow. They had a junior designer position open. The pay was modest but sustainable. Could I interview via video call? I interviewed in the Vietnamese restaurant's bathroom, the only place with decent lighting, and got a call back the same day. They wanted to meet me in person. The position was Seattle-based. Seattle was 3 hours from Vancouver. Closer to my kids. Back in the States, where I could start establishing residency for eventual divorce proceedings. When can you start? The creative director asked. 2 weeks, I said, calculating how quickly I could find an apartment and move. Perfect. Welcome aboard, Sarah. I hung up the call and cried in that bathroom for 5 minutes straight. Not sad tears this time. Relief. Hope. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, I could actually do this. Seattle Design Collective occupied a converted warehouse in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. The team was small, 12 people, most of them younger than me. They were kind without being patronizing, talented without being competitive. My position was entry-level, designing social media graphics and presentation decks, but I didn't care. It was stable income. Health insurance. A path forward. I found a 1-bedroom apartment in Ballard, small but significantly larger than my Vancouver studio. Real windows. A separate bedroom. A kitchen where I could actually cook. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I finally filed the paperwork to contact my children through proper channels. Oregon law required mediation before custody arrangements, and David's lawyer fought me every step of the way. He argued I'd abandoned the children, that I was unstable, that I'd forfeited my parental rights by leaving. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who I'd found through a women's support group, argued abandonment of marriage, not children. She presented the documented evidence of David's affair, the Thanksgiving ambush, the emotional manipulation. It took 4 months, but I was granted supervised visitation. 2 weekends a month, 4 hours each day, at a facility in Portland. The first visit almost broke me. Emma ran into the room and hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. Jake held back, uncertain, until I knelt down and opened my arms. Then he crashed into me, crying. "You left," he said into my shoulder. "You left us." "I left your father," I whispered. "Never you. Never, ever you. Then why can't you come home?" How do you explain to a 9-year-old that sometimes staying hurts more than leaving? That their mother had to save herself to be any good to them? Because home isn't always where we start, I said finally. Sometimes we have to build new ones. At work, I threw myself into every project, staying late and volunteering for the assignments no one else wanted. 6 months in, I'd been promoted twice, moving from social media graphics to brand identity work. That's when I met James Chen. His architecture firm, Chen and Associates, had hired Seattle Design Collective to rebrand their company. They'd been in business for 15 years but looked dated, and James wanted something that reflected their sustainable design philosophy. He came to our first meeting with a thick portfolio of past projects: eco-friendly homes, LEED, certified commercial buildings, innovative use of reclaimed materials. He was 45, with graying hair and sharp eyes that actually listened when people spoke. "I built this firm from nothing," he explained, spreading renderings across our conference table. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot that the public face matters as much as the foundation. My ex-wife used to handle marketing. After the divorce, I let it all slide." "How long ago was the divorce?" I asked, taking notes. 3 years. "She left me for a developer who builds McMansions in the suburbs." The irony wasn't lost on me. I looked up from my notepad. Irony? I spent 20 years advocating for sustainable architecture while she wanted the opposite. "Turns out, principals don't pay for luxury vacations." He said it without bitterness, just statement of fact. Over the next 3 months, I worked closely with James's firm. We redesigned their logo, rebuilt their website, created a visual identity that matched their environmental mission. James was involved in every decision, not in a micromanaging way, but because he genuinely cared about the details. We started having working lunches. Then working coffees. Then Friday afternoon meetings that somehow extended past business hours into dinner. "I should go," I'd say as the restaurant started emptying. "You should," he'd agree. Neither of us would move. One evening, after a particularly successful presentation to a major client, James suggested celebrating with a drink. We went to a quiet wine bar in Fremont, sat on the patio overlooking the canal, and talked about everything except work. "You never mention an ex-husband," he said eventually. "But you're still married." I paused mid-sip. "How did you know?" "You play with your ring finger sometimes. Like there used to be something there." I looked down at my bare hand. I hadn't worn my wedding ring since Vancouver, but apparently my body hadn't forgotten it. "Separated," I said. "Working on divorced." "How long?" 10 months. "What happened?" He asked it gently, giving me space to decline. I told him. Not everything, but the bones of it. The Thanksgiving ambush, the affair, the choice to leave. I didn't mention the children yet. That felt too vulnerable. "You walked away," he said, when I finished. "Most people can't do that. They stay out of fear or habit, or because they don't believe they deserve better." I was terrified, I admitted. "Some days I still am. But you did it anyway." He looked at me with something like admiration. "That's courage, Sarah. Or stupidity. Some people would say I should have fought for my marriage. Some people are idiots." He said it so matter-of-factly I laughed. Anyone who would orchestrate that kind of cruelty doesn't deserve fighting for. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but something had changed between us. An understanding. A connection. "I should tell you," I said as we walked back to our cars. "I'm not looking for anything complicated right now. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of being someone's wife." "Good," he replied. "Because I'm not looking for anything either. I'm too busy building buildings and apparently rebranding my entire business." "So we're clear?" "Crystal." He smiled. "Two people who aren't looking for anything, occasionally having wine and conversation." "Exactly. Same time next week?" "I'll bring the business cards, samples. I'll bring the questions about nothing in particular." It was a terrible lie. We were both absolutely looking for something. We just weren't ready to admit it yet. The divorce paperwork arrived 14 months after I'd left Portland. David was contesting everything: the custody arrangement, the asset split, even the grounds for divorce itself. His lawyer argued I'd abandoned the marriage without attempting reconciliation. My lawyer presented the evidence: the affair with Amanda, the Thanksgiving ambush, the hostile environment. "He's going to drag this out," Patricia warned. "He's angry. Embarrassed. Men like him don't like losing control." "What are my options?" "Oregon allows abandonment divorce after 2 years of separation. We're halfway there. If we push harder now, he'll make it ugly. If we wait, it's automatic." I thought about Emma and Jake, caught in the middle of their parents' war. "I'll wait." "That's probably wise. Use the time to build your case. Document everything. Continue the supervised visitation. Show you're stable, employed, committed to your children." So I waited. And while I waited, I built my life. My design work expanded beyond Seattle Design Collective. I started taking private clients on the side, building a portfolio strong enough that I could eventually go independent. I moved from my small Ballard apartment to a 2-bedroom in Green Lake, anticipating the day I'd have custody. My relationship with James evolved despite our mutual denials. Working dinners became regular dinners. Regular dinners became weekend hikes. Weekend hikes became the kind of comfortable companionship where silence felt as natural as conversation. I have kids, I told him finally, 6 months after our first wine bar conversation. 2 of them. Emma's 13 now. Jake's 10. I figured, he said. You play with your phone sometimes during our dinners. Like you're resisting the urge to check something. I can only see them twice a month. Supervised visits. The divorce is complicated. Most divorces are. This doesn't bother you? He looked at me across his kitchen table where we'd been reviewing his latest project. Why would it bother me? I'm still married. I have kids. I'm a mess. You're not a mess, Sarah. You're someone rebuilding after an earthquake. That's different. Is it? My ex-wife left me for someone richer. Took half my business value and started dating him before the papers were even signed. I spent a year thinking I wasn't enough. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but close enough that I could feel the warmth. You're enough. More than enough. Whenever you're ready to believe that. I cried in his kitchen that night, and he let me. No platitudes, no promises, just presence. I'm scared, I admitted. Of getting this wrong. Of letting someone close, and having them destroy me again. I'm scared too, he said. But I'm more scared of letting fear make my decisions. So what do? We take it slow. We keep being honest. We see what happens. That's a terrible plan. I know. He smiled. Want to try it anyway? I did. The 2-year mark arrived in November. 2 years since Thanksgiving, since the dinner I'd walked out on, since I'd driven across the Canadian border and sobbed in a studio apartment. Patricia filed the abandonment divorce immediately. David couldn't contest it after 2 years of separation. The decree would take 60 days to finalize. He wants to meet, Patricia told me over the phone. Face to face. His lawyer says he has something important to discuss. About what? The settlement. Asset division. Possibly custody. My stomach clenched. Is this a trap? I'll be there. It's at my office, neutral territory. But Sarah, you don't have to agree to anything. This is just a conversation. The meeting was scheduled for a cold December afternoon. I drove to Portland for the first time in 2 years, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. James had offered to come with me, wait in the car, be support, but I needed to do this alone. Patricia's office was downtown, modern and professional. David was already there when I arrived, sitting in the conference room with his lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. David looked older. Tired. The confidence he'd always carried like armor seemed diminished. When I walked in, his eyes widened slightly, as if he wasn't quite prepared for the reality of seeing me again. Sarah, he said, standing awkwardly. David. We sat across from each other, lawyers between us like referees. Thank you for coming, his lawyer began in that smooth professional tone they all used. My client wanted to discuss the settlement terms before we proceed to court. We're listening, Patricia said. David cleared his throat. The business isn't doing well. I lost 2 major clients last year. The overhead costs are substantial. I can't afford to split assets 50-50. I felt Patricia tense beside me, ready to argue. But I spoke first. You're asking me to accept less? I'm asking you to be reasonable. There it was, the edge in his voice. You left. You disappeared for 2 years. I've been supporting the children entirely on my own. You wanted me gone, I said calmly. You and your mother and Amanda orchestrated an intervention to make me feel worthless so I'd accept a divorce without fighting. Congratulations. I left. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Apparently David hadn't shared that detail. That's not David started. I have the text messages, I interrupted. Months of them. Planning the intervention, discussing your affair with Amanda, calling me dead weight. I saved everything. The silence in the room was deafening. What do you want? David finally asked, dropping the pretense. My fair share of the marital assets accumulated during our marriage. 50-50 split of the house equity, the retirement accounts, the savings, and joint custody of the children. Joint custody. His voice rose. You left them. I left you. There's a difference. That's not how they see it. Then help me show them otherwise. Stop fighting me on the custody arrangement. Let me be their mother again. David looked at his lawyer, who gave him a small nod. If I agree to joint custody, David said slowly, I need you to be reasonable about the asset split. I can't afford to buy you out of the house right now. I glanced at Patricia, who'd already briefed me on this possibility. We can structure payments over 5 years. Market rate interest. 3 years. 4. David looked at his lawyer again, then back at me. And the kids don't need to know everything. About Amanda, about the intervention. It would just hurt them. The kids deserve honesty, I said. Age-appropriate honesty. Emma's old enough to understand that marriages end. Jake will understand eventually. But I won't lie to protect your image. Fine. He sighed, defeated. 4-year payment plan. Joint custody starting after the decree is final. We mediate holidays. Patricia pulled out the revised settlement agreement she'd prepared for exactly this scenario. We spent the next hour reviewing details, initialing pages, making minor adjustments. When it was done, David and I were left alone while the lawyers stepped out to make copies. You look different, he said. I am different. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. I thought about my apartment in Seattle, my design work, my twice-monthly visits with my children, James and his patient presence. I'm getting there, I said honestly. Are you? Amanda and I broke up, he admitted. 6 months ago. Turns out she wanted the lawyer's wife, not the actual lawyer. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, not even pity. Just empty acknowledgement. I'm sorry, I said, because it seemed like the thing to say. Are you? He laughed bitterly. You destroyed everything. My reputation, my family's opinion of me, my relationship. All because of one dinner. No, I said firmly. You destroyed everything with years of taking me for granted, months of planning my humiliation, and an affair you thought I'd never discover. That dinner was just when I stopped playing along. So this is it. We sign papers and go back to being strangers? We were already strangers, David. I just stopped pretending otherwise. Patricia returned with the documents. We signed. It was anticlimactic, really. 15 years of marriage reduced to signatures and notarized stamps. As I walked out of the building into the cold Portland afternoon, David called after me. Sarah. Wait. I turned. For what it's worth, he said. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I thought. I don't know what I thought. That you'd fight harder. That you'd give me a reason to stay. I gave you 15 years of reasons, I said. You just never bothered to look for them. I got in my car and drove back to Seattle, to the life I'd built brick by careful brick, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt truly free. The divorce decree arrived in February, official and final. I was Sarah Mitchell again, legally single, co-parent to 2 children who were slowly learning to trust me again. James took me to dinner that night, a quiet restaurant on the waterfront where we'd become regulars. How does it feel? He asked. Strange. I admitted. Like closing a door I should have closed years ago. Any regrets? I thought about it honestly. I regret the time I lost with my kids. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. But leaving? No. That I don't regret. He reached across the table and took my hand. I know we said we'd take it slow. We have been. 2 years slow. Right. So. At this glacial pace, I was thinking maybe in another year or 2, I could officially call you my girlfriend? I laughed. Very official. Or, he said, his expression, turning serious, we could acknowledge that we're terrible at slow. That I've been in love with you for at least 8 months. That you keep a toothbrush at my place and I keep clothes at yours. My breath caught. James. I'm not proposing. I'm just saying we should stop pretending this is casual. It's complicated. I have kids. Shared custody means. I know. And I'm not trying to replace their father. I'm just trying to be someone who loves their mother. If they'll let me. I looked at this man who'd seen me at my lowest, who'd waited patiently while I put myself back together, who'd never once asked me to be anything other than exactly who I was. I'm terrible at relationships, I warned. Only with terrible people. With good people, you're actually excellent. How do you know? Because you're excellent with me. 6 months later, on a sunny August afternoon, James and I stood in a small courthouse with 10 of our closest friends. Not a wedding, exactly. More of a commitment ceremony, since I'd sworn I'd never walk down another aisle. But the vows were real. The promises were real. And when he slipped a simple gold band on my finger, twisted and imperfect and uniquely beautiful, I finally understood what partnership was supposed to feel like. Emma and Jake were there, standing beside us. They'd met James gradually, carefully, with lots of therapy and honest conversations. Emma had been skeptical at first, protective of me in a way that broke my heart. Jake had been easier, won over by James's collection of Lego sets and willingness to build for hours without complaint. Do you like him? Emma had asked me one night during our weekly phone call. Edo. I'd admitted. More than Dad? Different from Dad. Better for me. Good. She'd paused. You seem happy, Mom. Like, actually happy. Not pretend happy. I am, sweetheart. I really am. After the ceremony, we went to a small restaurant James had rented out, just our small group celebrating over pasta and wine and laughter. No grand gestures, no elaborate displays. Just simple joy. David had been invited. For the kids' sake. He'd declined politely through his lawyer. I was relieved. Some chapters needed to stay closed. As the evening wound down and our friends drifted away, I stood with James on the restaurant's patio, watching the Seattle skyline light up against the darkening sky. Any regrets? He asked, echoing his question from all those months ago. None, I said, leaning into him. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. We found each other exactly when we needed to. He kissed my forehead. So what's next for us, Mrs. Chen? It's still Mitchell professionally, I corrected with a smile. And next is whatever we want it to be. Maybe we build something together. Maybe we take it day by day. Maybe we just keep being happy. That sounds perfect. And it was. Not because the path had been easy or because I'd gotten revenge or proven anyone wrong. It was perfect because I'd chosen it myself. Every difficult step, every scary decision, every moment of doubt that led me here. I'd walked out of that Thanksgiving dinner with nothing but a suitcase and my self-respect. 2 years later, I had a career I'd built, children I was slowly reconnecting with, and a partner who saw me not as dead weight, but as someone worth waiting for. The life I had now wasn't a reaction to David or his mother or Amanda. It wasn't defined by running away or getting even. It was entirely my own creation, built choice by careful choice, day by determined day. And that, I realized as James held me close under the Seattle stars, was the sweetest victory of all.